Okay, so page 58, and if you want to write on the top of this page, this not only is how it works, but it's step 3 and step 4 are in this chapter. All right, we'll get right into it. Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. So a lot of times, this is read at every meeting for a reason. Right off the bat, it starts out with a promise. That is a promise right off the bat. Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. The problem is we don't see too many people thoroughly follow the path. Those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this simple program. I circled will not, and I circled completely give. Remember that willingness. They're going to keep stressing how we have to have it throughout this book. Give themselves to this simple program, usually men and women who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves.
That part, constitutionally incapable.
Mm-hmm.
Would you translate it into?
Yep. So constitutionally is relating to a person's physical and mental makeup. Is constitutionally relating to a person's physical and mental makeup. We have a disease relating to a person's physical and mental makeup. We have a disease that affects our physical and mental makeup. Incapable is not able.
Thank you.
Of course. Another word I like, circle that word give. Sometimes the most simple words that we pass over can mean a whole lot more than we think they mean. The definition of give is to hand over. To hand over. Remember when we read about surrendering? So constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. So we got to be willing. What else do we got to be? Honest. Without those things, we're not going to recover. And they're talking about people that cannot get honest at all. I didn't really think that people like that existed until you spend a lot of time in recovery. There are people that absolutely, I thought it was a refusal, but there are some that just can't get honest at all. Pathological liars, you meet them in recovery. And it says they are not at fault. They seem to have been born that way. They are naturally incapable of grasping and developing a manner of living, and I would highlight this, which demands rigorous honesty. So we don't just have to have honesty. The authors of this book are saying they demand it.
What's the definition for rigorous?
Rigorous, very strict, precise. Very strict, precise is rigorous. So can I just be a little bit honest and just put other dishonest things away? The dishonest things don't go away in this program, unfortunately. Their chances are less than average. There are those too who suffer from grave emotional and mental disorders. We looked up that word grave. It means deadly. Grave emotional and mental disorders. And I wrote out to the side, after reading what we've read, we know we have one, right? Is alcoholism a grave emotional and mental disorder? I hope everybody's nodding. We spent a lot of time on that. So we already have that, but there are more. There's other mental and emotional disorders out there. I was diagnosed with probably a dozen, if not more. But here's the good news. Many of them do recover if they have the capacity to be honest. And I would highlight that.
Circle.
Circle honest, and I wrote hope right next to that sentence. Our stories disclose in a general way what we used to be like, what happened, and what we are like now. If you have decided you want what we have and are, highlight this, willing to go to any length to get it. I highlighted that, I circled that, and I wrote commitment right next to that. One of the hardest things an alcoholic can do in recovery is make a commitment. Hard for all of us. I don't care if you're a week, 10 years, 50 years, making a commitment is difficult to do. Why do you think we don't have a lot of service positions open? We're always struggling to find service positions. I don't care where you're at, any meeting. You ask them, if you need a service position and there's a room of 50 people, how many of those people are going to raise their hands? Not many. It's usually not double digits. But willing to go to any length to get it. We have to make a commitment. Early on in recovery, that commitment should be doing the 12 steps, going through with the process that this book offers us. That's where you got to make that commitment. I was at this point still convinced that this would not work for me. I was convinced these 12 steps would not work for me. I had done them over and over and over. I thought I did. But I got to the point where I'm either going to live or die, and I was in a gray area on that. When you have to think about when you want to live or die, you're in a bad spot. But I made the commitment that I was going to go through with it. I don't care what it took or how I felt, I made a commitment I was going to go through these steps. So then you are ready to take certain steps. As some of these we balked. The word balk means to block, to refuse to go. To block, to refuse to go. There's a lot of people that are in the process of doing step 1 or step 2, and they look at step 9 and they're already balking it. They're already putting a block on it, refusing to go further. Don't do that. Worry about the step that you're on today. We thought we could find an easier, softer way. Here's the answer to that. Highlight it. But we could not. Pretty simple. With all the earnestness at our command, highlight this, we beg of you to be fearless and thorough from the very start. Remember, these are the first 100 alcoholics that wrote this book. Are they asking us to be thorough? They're begging us, because they know if we're not thorough and we keep something, we're not going to get through it. So they're begging us to be fearless and thorough from the very start. Some of us have tried to hold on to our old ideas, and the result was nil. Nil means zero, nothing. Zero, nothing is nil. And I highlighted the rest of it. Until we let go absolutely. And I wrote surrender right next to that. Letting go absolutely is not an easy thing to do. All right, remember that we deal with alcohol, cunning, baffling, powerful. All right, Big Daniel, Riley, and Bill cannot answer this. What's the most important word in this sentence?
Remember.
Man.
You didn't say me.
Man, I didn't say you. You heard that one before. She's absolutely right. Circle that word, remember. Why? Why is remember the most important word in that sentence?
That way you remember.
We have a mind that wants us to forget. We have a mind that tells us we do not have a disease. We have a mind that tells us we are not a drug addict, we are not an alcoholic. One day we can do it again. That's the mind we're up against. So remember we deal with alcohol, which is cunning, baffling, and powerful. Without help, it is too much for us. That is a promise. But there is one who has all power. I see one, and I see it capitalized. That one is God. Again, may you find him now.
Must find.
Again, the second part of step 2. There was no gray area for those that were here last week. God either is or he isn't. There's no gray area in between. We can conjure up all kinds of gray area. We can do that. And most of the time we do that, we struggle. But half measures availed us nothing. That's a promise. We stood at the turning point. We asked his protection and care with complete abandon. Again, I wrote down surrender. Complete abandon.
Got fired already?
That's a legitimate question.
No.
I'm glad you're here.
Got pooped on.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you made it. We're on page 59.
You were first shift training.
Page 59. Here are the steps we took, which are suggested as a program of recovery. 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. Is that the real step 1?
No.
It's a part of it, right? What's the real step 1?
Page 30.
We had to concede to our innermost selves that we were alcoholics. This is the first step in recovery. Page 30. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Are we insane? Do we need God to restore us to sanity? And can that happen? It can. And if you're not there yet, it's okay, because I didn't believe it at this point either. God can restore your sanity. I was nuts, sober. A lot of us were. But that step, it holds true when you work them all. I'm not going to read the rest of them because we're not at step 3 yet, so turn the page. Many of us exclaimed, "What an order, I can't go through with it." Do not be discouraged. That is a direction. I would highlight that. As alcoholics and addicts, we can get discouraged quickly, several times a day. But the point of this is that no one among us has been able to maintain anything like perfect adherence to these principles. Adherence is devotion. Nobody is going to be devoted to these steps and principles. We're going to do our best. That's all we can do. We're going to do our absolute best. We're going to try to be perfect. We have to settle for progress. We are not saints. And here's the point. The point is we are, highlight willing to grow along spiritual lines. We've read that word a couple times already, just in this chapter. Willing. The principles we have set down are guides to progress. Highlight that. We claim spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. Here's a great definition for progress. Forward movement.
Gradual betterment.
That's a good one too. Gradual betterment, forward movement. You can have the worst day on the planet, but if you get through the day without drinking or using, it's a good day. It's still progress. I won't say it's a good day, but it's progress. And that's where we have to stay. We got to stay in progress. Our description of the alcoholic, the chapter to the agnostic, and our personal adventures before and after make clear 3 pertinent ideas. Clear, yep. And I would highlight all three. I put all of them in brackets. The old timers, I don't hear much of this in the rooms anymore, but they call it the ABCs. The ABCs are another way of saying steps 1, 2, and 3. So A, that we were alcoholic and could not manage our own lives. B, that probably no human power could have relieved our alcoholism. And C, that God could and would if he were sought. So the ABCs are steps 1, 2, and 3. Being convinced, we were at step 3. So italicized words, this is where you want to write step 3. This is where it starts. And again, when you're working with someone and you get them to this point, ask them if they are convinced that they are on step 3. If they're still struggling here, if they're an alcoholic, or if they're still struggling with God and being willing to believe, it's kind of hard to move forward. And we went over that in step 2. And now they're saying in step 3, being convinced, we were at step 3. Which is that we decided to turn our will and our life over to God as we understood him. Just what do we mean by that, and just what do we do? Question mark. I would highlight this first sentence. The first requirement is that we be convinced, there's that word again, that any life run on self-will can hardly be a success. Now we're going to start getting into self. On that basis, we are almost always in collision with something or somebody, even though our motives are good. Most people try to live by self-propulsion. Each person is like an actor who wants to run the whole show. Now think about your mind and what it does on a daily basis. Is forever trying to arrange the lights, the ballet, the scenery, and the rest of the players in his own way. And I would highlight this. If his arrangements would only stay put, if only people would do as he wished, the show would be great. Right?
Yes.
You can write self all over this page. It's gonna really start describing selfishness, self-centeredness. But as I'm reading, just think about what your mind does. Everybody, including himself, would be pleased. Life would be wonderful. In trying to make these arrangements, our actor may sometimes be quite virtuous. Virtuous means pure in thought. Pure in thought is virtuous. He may be kind, considerate, patient, generous, even modest and self-sacrificing. On the other hand, he may be mean, egotistical, selfish, and dishonest. But as with most humans, he is more likely to have varied traits. So selfishness can come in our thoughts and in our actions, whether we're doing good things or doing bad things. It's describing both of them. Can we be selfish doing good things? Yes. Absolutely. We'll get into what self-seeking is. That's right. What usually happens when we're trying to run the whole show? I want to highlight it. The show doesn't come off very well. He begins to think life doesn't treat him right. He decides to exert himself more. He becomes on the next occasion still more demanding or gracious as the case may be. Still, the play does not suit him. Admitting he may be somewhat at fault, he is sure that other people are more to blame. And that's usually where we go first. It's always others. He becomes angry, indignant, and self-pitying. What is his basic trouble? And I would highlight the rest of this paragraph. Is he not really a self-seeker, even trying to be kind? So self-seeking. I'm going to give this homeless person a $100 bill, but I'm going to wait until everybody sees me doing it. I'm going to walk this senior citizen across the street, but I'm going to wait so everybody stops and sees me doing it.
Would that be like needing validation?
Self-seeking, absolutely. I don't need something physical to be self-seeking or material to be self-seeking. I could want somebody's respect and be selfish. I could want somebody's how they think of me and be selfish. Self-seeking is a huge part of untreated alcoholism. Is he not a victim of, there's that word, delusion. Do you guys have that memorized yet? What's delusion?
Something is not real.
Very, very close, yeah. Persistent false psychotic belief. But yeah, it goes back to Dr. Silkworth not being able to recognize the true from the false. Unreal. But we can have a delusion not only of alcoholism, but of our defects as well. Self-seeking, selfishness, dishonesty, all part of that delusion. That he can wrest satisfaction, so this is rest, W-R-E-S-T, and that means a forcible twist. Rest, a forcible twist. I like to think of it as a wet towel when I'm trying to twist happiness out of something.
And that's rest?
Rest, W-R-E-S-T, a forcible twist. Out of this world, if he only manages well. Is it not evident to all the rest of the players that these are the things that he wants? And do not his actions make each of them wish to retaliate, snatching all they can get out of the show? Is he not even in his best moments a producer of confusion rather than in harmony? Confusion is a really good sign of where your spirituality is in the day. If you're confused, you're usually backed up with more than one defect. Our actor is self-centered, egocentric, as people like to call it nowadays. He is like the retired businessman who lolls in the Florida sunshine in the winter, complaining of the sad state of the nation. The minister who sighs over the sins of the 20th century, politicians and reformers who are all sure would be utopia if the rest of the world would only behave, the outlaw safecracker who thinks society has wronged him up, and the alcoholic who has lost all and is locked up. You see the examples they're using? Humans are never satisfied. Whatever our protestations are, and that just means to protest, to object, are not most of us concerned with ourselves, our resentments, or our self-pity. And in big letters on this page, you see my page, selfishness. I would highlight the rest of the page. There is no other page in this book that describes selfishness like this page does. And it's the reason that we have to do step 3. I have right next to this first part, selfishness, self-centeredness, I have untreated alcoholism right next to it. Selfishness, self-centeredness, that we think is the root of our troubles. Remember when it said a few pages back, the crux of our problem is mental? And it's saying the root cause of my mental condition is selfishness. Driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity, we step on the toes of our fellows and they retaliate. Sometimes they hurt us, seemingly without provocation, but we invariably find that at some time in the past, and this is where I just started highlighting at will, we have made decisions based on self, which later placed us in a position to be hurt. Uh-oh. We don't like to look at this stuff.
That happened in relationships.
Everything. When you start doing the 4-step, you're going to see selfishness played a part in almost everything you have written down. Here we go. Our troubles, we think, are basically of our own making. They arise out of ourselves, and the alcoholic is an extreme example of self will run riot. Here's the kicker, though he usually doesn't think so. This is hard stuff to overcome, and this is some of the key reasons why we drink and why we use. And along with highlighting this, underline this, star this, above everything, we alcoholics must be rid of this selfishness. We must, or it kills us. Have they said anything up to this point about alcohol and drugs killing us? What are they saying kills us? A lot of people die sober. I know a lot of people that have, got to that jumping off point that we already read about, sober. It's not the alcohol and the drugs that are the problem, and we've studied that over the past few weeks. But this selfishness, if I don't do anything about it, the book is saying that it will kill me, or make you thoroughly miserable before you do that. Usually it drives you to a very bad place, or it drives you back to meetings and getting into the work harder. That's what it did to me. The next sentence is great, though. God makes that possible. First one is a promise. Second one is a promise. God makes that possible. And there often seems no way of entirely getting rid of self without his aid. Another promise. Many of us have had moral and philosophical convictions galore, but we could not live up to them even though we would have liked to. Neither could we reduce our self-centeredness much by wishing or trying on our own power. We had to have God's help. Period. This starting here and then up to the top of 63, I have it all bracketed, and these are the step 3 promises. I always tell people that these promises mean, I love all the promises in this book, but these really hit home for me and mean probably the most for me, because I didn't believe any of them. I did not believe these things that the authors of this book were telling me would come true. I lived in fear and anger and selfishness and anxiety and depression. That was my life. I didn't think that anxiety that I had daily would go away. So let's read it. And it's okay. Some of you are going to see that some of these already came true. Some of you aren't going to believe, but just stay in progress. This is the how and why of it. First of all, we had to quit playing God. It didn't work. Next, we decided that hereafter in this life, in this drama of life, God was going to be our director. That's a direction. He is the principal, we are his agents. He is the father, and we are his children. Most good ideas are simple, and this concept was the keystone of the new and triumphant arc through which we pass to freedom. That is a promise. Keystone is a very important word in this context. Definition of keystone is the part that locks the other pieces in place. The part that locks the other pieces in place. Johnny just represented an arch, so you know what an arch is. Every keystone is in an arch. What happens if that arch doesn't have a keystone? It crumbles, it collapses. So what are the pieces that it's talking about? Step 1 and step 2. Step 1 is one side of the arc. Step 2 is the other side of the arc. Step 3 is the keystone. So you can be fully, you can be good with step 1, know what alcoholism is, know that you are alcoholic, and you can believe in God and know who he is. That's where I was. But without step 3, without giving my life over to the care and direction of God daily, step 1 and 2 fall apart. So step 3 is the keystone of step 1 and 2. And if I do that, it's saying I'm going to have a triumphant arc through which we pass to freedom. Big promise. I didn't know how to do that, and I believed in God. I had no idea how to do that. But we'll get into that too. And then it says, when we sincerely took such a position, all sorts of remarkable things followed. We had a new employer, being all-powerful. He provided what we needed if we kept close to him and performed his work well. Established on such a footing, we became less and less interested in ourselves, our little plans and designs. More and more, we became interested in seeing what we could contribute to life. These are all promises. As we felt new power flow in, as we enjoyed peace of mind, as we discovered we could face life successfully, as we became conscious of his presence, we began to lose our fear of today, tomorrow, or the hereafter. We were reborn. Has anybody felt those promises? Have any of those promises come true for people? And if they haven't, it's okay. Because like I said, it's talking about fear of today or tomorrow or the hereafter. I lived in that every single day. I was scared of everything so badly that, I gave myself physical problems. And my response was usually other people's fault and anger. Anger is a direct result from fear and what we keep inside. So to go from that to not having fear today, it'll crop up on you, but I recognize what it is today. I don't have fear today. And because of AA, it's given me that gift of awareness to recognize when fear's on me. If I'm acting out in anger, guess what? Fear's already there. Pride's already there. Selfishness is already there. So you gotta keep track of those defects and do something about them. And this is the process that shows us what to do. And this part is giving it to God. Immediately, we can do that several times a day. But this step is telling us we're not alone. No matter what, we are not alone. He's our director. He's our principal. Pretty powerful stuff in that paragraph. The keystone. So it says we are now at step 3. So bracket this next paragraph and label this the third step prayer. I'm going to read the paragraph after this because we're going to do this prayer as a group on our knees, just like the first 100 alcoholics did it in the upper room of Bill's house and Bob's house. That's what they did. When a newcomer came in, they took you through 1 and 2, and then you went upstairs and you gave your life to God. That's what they did. Old school. We're going to do the same thing. Old school. But a lot of people think you can do this step by yourself. I did. I grouped step 2 and 3 together. I'm good with God. Let's move on. What does this paragraph say? We found it very desirable to take this spiritual step with an understanding person, such as our wife, best friend, or spiritual advisor. But it is better to meet God alone than with one who might misunderstand. The wording was, of course, quite optional, so long as we express the idea of voicing it without reservation. This was only a beginning, though if honestly and humbly made, an effect, sometimes a very great one, was felt at once. All right, we ready for step 3?
Yes.
All right, we can just do it where we are. You don't have to. No, you don't have to. You're a warrior. You know that? You're a warrior. And after we say the prayer, just pause for about a minute, 60 seconds, a little less than 60 seconds, and just reflect, just meditate on what you just said, okay? All right, out loud, all of us. Many of us said to our Maker, as we understood him, God, I offer myself to thee to build with me, to do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, the victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always. Still say that prayer today. I've been doing it since 2009. He's been doing it since 91. When I wake up in the morning and open my eyes, I'm in step 1 because I'm in untreated alcoholism. Just because I woke up the next morning and I have a new day doesn't mean I'm not alcoholic. So I have to know automatically what alcoholism is, and I know I am one. So I got to get God in immediately. I believe in God. I believe that Jesus is Lord and Savior.
Amen.
Right there, I'm in step 2, and then I go immediately into step 3. Just because I believe doesn't mean I can't. Faith without works is dead, as we read that. We need action to bring Him in. So I mean I get into step 3 immediately. I give it to Him. So step 1, 2, and 3 should be done upon awakening. If I forget any of those and I wake up and do my thing and I'm out the door or go to work, I usually do not have a good day. I don't remember doing it, but I remember being in and out before I took these steps seriously. So then I would wake up and not care that I'm an alcoholic, or I do repetitive prayer, or I just do my own thing in selfishness, and I'd be drinking again. Steps 1, 2, and 3. Make it a routine. Make that time with God in the morning. I know it's hard for a lot of us because we got work but just try to make that time during the day. I find in the morning upon awakening is the most beneficial. We'll get to that when we get to step 11, but the authors tell us to do that too. Step 3 isn't a step that just stops. It's done daily. Does that make sense? What does the next sentence say? Does it say we sit on step 3 and wait a week? That's what I thought these steps took once every 6 months, or a step a year. Sometimes you hear that in meetings. Let's do a step a year. It says, next we launched out on a course of vigorous action. I would highlight that. It doesn't say to pause. It doesn't say to wait. It says to get right into step 4. Vigorous action. Vigorous means carried out forcefully and energetically. Carried out forcefully and energetically.
Yeah, I put down, done with force and energy.
The way these guys became recovered from a hopeless state or mind and body, they didn't mess around with the steps. They did them thoroughly, they did them honestly, but they did not pause on them. They did them one right after the other. So next we launched out on a course of vigorous action, the first step of which a personal house cleaning, which many of us had never attempted. Though our decision was a vital and crucial step, so there's that word vital again. So step 3 was a vital and crucial step, vital meaning necessary to the maintenance of life. It could have little permanent effect unless, here's 2 very important words, at once, followed by a strenuous effort to face and be rid of the things in ourselves which had been blocking us. So again, we launched on a course of vigorous action, and at once I need to start getting into my 4th step. Or what? The step we just did, giving myself to God, is going to have little permanent effect. Highlight this. Our liquor was but a symptom. You don't hear a lot of this in meetings. So we had to get down to causes and conditions. Again, they're emphasizing liquor itself is not the problem. The drug itself is not the problem. Therefore, we started upon a personal inventory. This was step 4. So italicized words, this is where it starts. This is where, when you're helping someone, it's going to start in the book. And I would write on the top of the page, step 4. And I also have resentment in big letters. Resentment and step 4 starts on page 64. A business which takes no regular inventory usually goes broke. So this is Bill Wilson. What was he? He was a stockbroker, so that's his mindset as we're reading this. Taking a commercial inventory, and I highlighted the rest of this paragraph, is a fact-finding and fact-facing process. What do you think the facts are that they're talking about?
About yourself.
Exactly. Our defects, our sins. It is an effort to discover the truth about the stock in trade. Who's the stock in trade? Me. Yep, write me right next to that. Just so you don't forget. The stock in trade is me. I need to discover the truth about me. One object is to disclose damaged or unsalable goods. What are those damaged or unsalable goods?
Character defect.
There you go. Character defects. To get rid of them promptly and without regret. If the owner of the business is to be successful, he cannot fool himself about values. What does that mean?
Gotta be honest.
Right, honesty right next to that.
Just because you think something's serving you doesn't mean it is.
That's right. That's right. And if I can be honest about 9 out of 10 things, where's that one thing going? Is it going anywhere? No. It's going to stay inside me, and it's going to keep me sicker. We are as sick as our secrets. We did exactly the same thing with our lives. We took stock honestly. Circle that word honestly. First, we searched out the flaws in our makeup which caused our failure. Being convinced that self manifested in various ways was what had defeated us, we considered its common manifestations. So is everybody convinced that self is what got you here? So now we're going to get into the manifestations of self. So in other words, when I'm selfish, am I just selfish? No, there's going to be other things that branch out from selfishness. And this is the number one branch that we're getting into. Highlight this whole paragraph. This is why you put resentment on the top of your page. Resentment is the number 1 offender. Do not forget this. Not number 2, not number 3. It is the number 1 offender. It destroys more alcoholics than anything else. The longer you stay in AA, the more you will see it destroy alcoholics. From it stem all forms of spiritual disease. There's some people in the rooms that say alcoholism is not a disease, and what are they just saying there? It is a spiritual disease. For we have been not only mentally and physical ill, we have been spiritually sick. So those are the three components of alcoholism. How does it affect us? Physically, mentally, and spiritually. All three.
Malady.
That's right. If you leave one out, you're not talking about alcoholism and drug addiction. It affects us spiritually, mentally, and physically. All of it. This next sentence is awesome. When this spiritual malady, so this is the word that is describing right above it, spiritual disease. What's the definition of malady? Write this at the bottom of your page. A fatal disease. So the word disease is used once in the first 164 pages. We just read it. The word malady is used 6 more times. So alcoholism is absolutely a spiritual disease. And they use the word malady so they didn't offend a lot of the doctors that didn't think it was a disease. Dr. Silkworth absolutely thought it was a disease.
I didn't for a long time.
Well, if you break the word apart, dis-ease, you have a disease of the mind causing a disease of the body.
That's right. Yep. And the good news is when the spiritual malady is overcome, we straighten out mentally and physically. So you think God's important? It says when the spiritual malady is overcome, we straighten out physically and mentally. All right, we're not going to get past this. You thought I was going to get into every single inventory and you got to do all the writing now. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to show you how to do the resentment inventory. We have 3 inventories, but we can get started on the resentment one right away. And this is the directions for it. I have it up there. You see the chart on the next page? I'm resentful at, the cause, and affects my. That's all this is. So imagine this is a sheet of paper, notebook, and usually the red line in the notebook is there, the other red line is there. Those make perfect first and fourth columns. There is a fourth. We're not going to get into the fourth today. I'm more concerned about these first 3 columns. So A, B, and C have room for a fourth column for a D, but we're not going to get into that one yet.
I think I did my first one wrong.
Well, now you're going to do it right.
There's different ways that you can do them. I did not do mine that way.
Well, I did it this way. I don't know. I didn't get it.
And she's right. There are different ways, but if you've never done it the original way, the first 100 alcoholics did it, as a suggestion, I would do it that way. Are there other ways? Sure. But for your very first 4th step, I highly suggest doing it the way it is done in the big book. Because you're not going to get it all done. You'll never get it all done. You do your best. Progress. You do your best as you're writing at the time. Because more defects are going to come, more resentments are going to come. They don't go away, but this offers a solution on how to deal with them, how to get through them.
And the only difference between this way and the way I did it was I just did 1 all the way through, and then I went back and did 2. So, I mean...
Mine was like jumbled, kind of. Because I did exactly that. I was like, alright, I guess I'll write down everybody I'm pissed at. For real reasons, not just oh, whatever, this, I don't like this guy. No, it was real.
Yeah, if you want to sit down, I can show you exactly how I walk
And I
and
have
go through
a
it.
ton.
All right, let's go through it. And you still have that, right? Because don't throw that away.
Yeah.
So, let's see. In dealing with resentments, we set them on paper. So here's the directions. We listed people, institutions, or principles with whom we were angry. So write a big letter A right in front of that sentence. That's what the first column is. You can put on page 65, you see these columns on 65? I put A, B, C, and D. It's just easy to reference that way. So the first column is people, institutions, or principles. 99% of it is going to be people. But you could get mad at the courthouse. You could get mad at the institution you were in.
There you go. I was
Yeah.
gonna say, I knew that was
Actually,
gonna
I
be
think
there.
Army was number 2.
So yeah, that's a big one for you. But that's all that first column is. And then it says, we asked ourselves why we were angry. Put a big letter B right there. That's the second column. The cause. And I'm going to read the third one, and then I'm going to go back and just make sure everyone understands. In most cases, it was found out that our self-esteem, our pocketbooks, our ambitions, our personal relationships, including sex, were hurt or threatened. So we were sore, we were burnt up. On our grudge list, we set opposite each name our injuries. Was it our self-esteem, our security, our ambitions, our personal or sex relations which had been interfered with? There's 3 more I want you to write down, because you'll see them in the third column that Bill has right below this. Pocketbook, fear, and pride. And you'll see those 3 in the example right below in that third column. You see fear in parentheses, and then pride is the last one. I gotta make sure I do this right for the video too. So, we're not writing a novel. We're not writing a freaking book, and that's what a lot of people think. We want to do the least amount of writing as possible to get through this. They want us on a course of vigorous action. They don't want us tied down, writing down detail after detail after detail. You can do those details in the 5th step with your sponsor. Okay, because there's going to be certain people, places, institutions that you're going to talk about an hour, but you don't need to write an hour worth of it down. So the first column, example, Bob. And go straight across. Number 1, Bob. Cheated with my wife. Now that could be 2 hours of conversation, right? But all you're doing is writing cheated with my wife, and that's what you're going to talk about in the 5th step. But as you're writing it down, just keep it simple and short. You'll get into the detail in the 5th step. What did that affect? You go right to the bottom of 64 to the top of 65. Use those words that they use. Did it affect your self-esteem? Did it affect your pocketbook, your financial? Did it affect your ambition, your personal relationship? And then it says sex relations, and then pocketbook, fear, or pride. What did that affect? And you write those down. If it affected everything, write all. And then move on. So Bob, then cheated on my wife, and then the bottom of 64, top of 65, the words that describe how it affected you. Then you move on to number 2, Joe. Joe punched me in my face. How did that affect me? Now that punch in the face could be a half-hour conversation, right? But you know what it entails. And then maybe right under that, he punched my friend in the face. Like, one guy could have several different causes, or one girl. So if there's more than one, write more than one right next to. So where's the
What was that guy's name again?
Joe?
Oh, Joe.
So Bob cheated. I know my handwriting is terrible. Wife, and then I'm just going to put all. If that's all Bob did, I'm going to do this. Bob's done. Number 2, Joe. Punch me. There's one. He also punched my friend. I know. But you see how there's 2 of them, and there may be a third. But you put all the ones for Joe next to Joe.
Right.
What did it affect?
Your pride.
Fear, pride,
Self-esteem.
self-esteem, and I'll abbreviate. I don't have to write self-esteem. I know what SE is. The point is getting the writing done. And I'm gonna do that. Next person.
The faster you do it, the better it is.
Am I writing a novel? No. I did a few 4 steps at the beginning because my sponsor had their own way, so I did it their way that had nothing to do with the book, and I was writing and writing and writing. I couldn't finish it.
Oh my God.
I went out and drank. I couldn't do it.
It's your story. When you
It
get to
is.
your sponsor, you're gonna know what to say.
Exactly.
You don't have to
Exactly.
read it
The 5th step, you can spend 10 hours in your 5th step, and that's fine. That's what the 5th step is for, is to get everything out. The 4th step is to get it on paper so it's clear to you what you have inside and get through it quickly.
I got so mad looking at it on paper. Like I threw it across the room.
That's what it's supposed to do. So, and a lot of people think, I can't do the 4th step. How can you not write down the people that piss you off? That should be easy with all of us. And that's what most of the 4th step is. I'm not introducing you to the 4th column yet. They're going to switch it on you. But how hard is it to write who pissed you off or place, what they did, as short and as brief as possible, and how it affected you?
That's what happened. The first time I did it, my sponsor was like, just write this down. And then I did, and I came back, and he was like, well, what about all the people that you wronged? And I was like, wait, you didn't tell me to do that part.
So and we'll get into those now. So the people that have harmed you, they're all going to write those down. Yourself is going to be a huge one. So you're going to have people that you're not mad at, you're not angry with, but did you harm them? That brought up a whole bunch of people from elementary school to junior high to high school. I wasn't mad at these people. Did I harm them? I absolutely did. So am I mad at myself for harming them? I should be. And if I'm not, they still need to go down. But when you do yourself, you put myself there, you're going to have a name here. And maybe another name, maybe another name. What I did to that person. Because if it's still with you, it still affects you. So there's people you're mad at that are easy to write down. Then you got to think about yourself. Why are you mad at yourself? You put your reason. But then, did you harm anyone? Are you mad at yourself for harming this person? Some people have an entire separate list of harms. But if you do myself as one of the people in your resentment list, they should all fall under yourself. Because are you mad at yourself for causing this harm?
So where did the 4th column come from?
I'm not telling you until next week.
We are not there yet, Johnny.
Don't worry about
You're
it.
jumping ahead. We're not on
And
step 9 yet.
there's a point to the not introducing the 4th column yet, okay? Because that will bog you down. Right now, we want to get you moving and writing.
And so the only difference between the way my sponsor had me do it and the piece of paper like this is that he said, get a notebook. On the very first page, put who you're resentful for. Flip it, put the next person on the next page, flip it. And one person per page, that's it. Now go back to the very beginning and do column 2, right there. But that way you're not focusing on everybody above. You just have that one page to look at, one page to fill out, and that's it. And it's the same precipice that we just do the very minimal writing, but just do it on one page so that my mind doesn't get bogged down seeing all of this list of people.
That works too. I mean, for me, I find it
It was really fast, really easy.
easier just to go across just because you're on that person now that you wrote about and you know what they did to you and how it affected you. So if you go across, I don't know. I mean, her way, if you want to do page, that gives you plenty of room, and you're going to have a big, thick notebook to go through, but it's the same thing.
The only difference was I didn't have to focus on anything major. I just, this person, this person, this person, this person. And then I could go back and go, okay, what's really going through my mind? This person, this person, this. Because our mind plays tricks on us. Like, we can be pissed off at this person here right now. It'll take a month or so, we're still pissed off. Something happens, you forget about them for a week, and then all of a sudden you're pissed off at them again. So.
It's up to you. When you start writing, like if I'm focused on this person from 6th grade that I harmed, I want to write down how I harmed them. And I want to be done with that person, on to my next person. You don't want to get bogged down with the writing.
Yep.
You just want to get the writing done.
How I harm them?
Are you mad at yourself for harming them?
Oh.
See what I mean?
Okay.
When you put yourself is going to have pages, because that's where you harmed people. Are you mad at yourself for harming that person?
And that's not the same thing as the fourth column?
No.
No.
Stay away from the fourth.
Stop-
There is
stop.
no fourth column.
There is
There's
no
no
right
fourth.
right now. There is no 4th column. Just leave
1, 2,
it.
3.
Leave it blank. A, B, C. Person you're mad at, including yourself. Who's another one we forget? God. Put God. Yep. Some people are at this point where they're still, the book is pretty clear that we need to be willing, but if you may get to the point where there's still a non-belief there, or there's still a stuck there, or there's still an anger there, but he should be on there. Institutions, like I said, jail, rehab, school, a place that harmed you.
Your employment?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yep. Current employment for sure. Walmart. But the point is getting that stuff down and getting done with it. Like I said, how hard is it to write down the people that you're mad at? And you got to remember, everybody that you're mad at, that is what is keeping you sick. Because I guarantee whenever any of us do this, I don't care how much sober you are, you're not writing down one thing. You're not. The hardest part is putting the pen to paper. That is the hardest part. As soon as you sit down and put pen to paper, you're going to keep writing. And it's not going to be one person. God's going to reveal more as you do it. The hardest part is starting. And take breaks. If it's your first thorough inventory, this is the thorough inventory. Don't think you have to get it all done in one sitting. Do as much as you can. Take a break. But again, the authors want that vigorous action. They want you to get, and it's not going to be perfect. It's just doing the best you can. You're not going to get everybody. I have resentment still pop up, 15 years later from, decades ago. That's going to happen.
More gets revealed.
More will be revealed. But right now, you got to get the stuff that's on the forefront of your mind. Everybody here in this room has somebody on the forefront of their mind that they're pissed off at right now. I guarantee it. Skate City.
I had a freaking blast. I am so not mad at them. I broke my tailbone and my...
All right, I'm going to turn this off. It's just getting started. And then the first 3 columns should be done next week, next session. And then I'm going to introduce the 4th column, and then I'm going to have two more inventories.